The Untold Story with Martha MacCallum. Exclusive interviews with top newsmakers who share their inspiring stories of perseverance, positivity, and more. Now, here's Martha MacCallum.
After months of silence, President Trump's campaign manager, Brad Parscale, tells his side of the story. He was once hailed the digital genius behind Trump's upset victory in 2016. Parscale claims that he was on track for an even bigger victory in 2020. But all that changed this summer amid a flurry of questions about his campaign spending and a tense confrontation with the president over falling poll numbers. Soon after, he was replaced by Deputy Campaign Manager Bill Stepien, a man he hired. And we all watched as his personal struggles spilled into public view in a domestic incident that revealed the strain. Parscale returns to tell his side of the story, what he thinks went wrong inside the Trump campaign and what led to his now infamous run-in with the police. Here now, my exclusive interview with former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale. Brad, good to have you with us. Thanks for doing this today.
I'm glad to be back with you, Martha.
So let's go back. We're about a month now from Election Day, November 3rd.
Yep.
Give everybody at home your take on what happened.
Well, it's not over yet. And I have to say that, look, I think there are some slight things that are a little strange, right? And you can see that across the country. But, and I think the president has an option to go and, investigate those things and see. And I really think Congress and Senate should look into those. But I do think there are some things that went along the way that I think the president should have been in a position to just win this outright. And I think that I think there's a lot of issues along the way that could have been better.
Like?
Well, I mean, I think that we had a plan. And I always had a lot of confidence in our plan. And I think the president and Jared had a lot of confidence in the plan. And it was unfortunate that we diverged from the plan right as we came down the stretch. But I think I think the president's still clearly in a position that he might be able to pull this off. And I'm not ready to call it off yet because I think it's weird. I just think it's still weird that, things like in Pennsylvania, the votes keep coming in day after day after day after day. Arizona, every 2 hours, the votes kept coming in. But states like where they had it really organized, Florida and Ohio, easily pulled away. And so I still think there's something to look at there. I'm not satisfied that this was a fair election. And I really don't understand this country. We're one of the most organized and most best countries in this world, and why we can't have a fair and transparent election still. What is it we can't do it? Why can't these states figure it out? I mean, I can almost do anything in this country and it's fair and transparent. But why can't we have an election that is?
I think it's a great question, and I want to dig into that a little bit more with you in just a moment in terms of what you see in those different states. But just going back to the strategy, you said we had a plan, me, the president, Jared, and it was diverged from at the end. Obviously, you left finally first in the summer, and then finally
I was removed.
In September.
I was removed.
How'd you feel about that?
I mean, I was hurt. I mean, that's an obvious sign now that I was hurt. I didn't get a warning sign, really, that no one asked me to change my plan. No one asked me to do anything different. I don't know exactly why I was removed and why all of a sudden we had to challenge the plan. I have a lot of thoughts of why I think that is. But, they paused the plan. Eventually went back to it, but we had a plan. I had a lot of time to plan. And in 16, people don't like to admit it, but, I was a semi-quasi campaign manager. Never got to say that publicly before because I couldn't. Jared was the real campaign manager. I was the one doing the day-to-day, and we won. And it really didn't make sense to me why in 20 they had to change away from that.
2016?
2016. I'm saying I never really got to say what I really did. I never really got to say I was the semi-quasi campaign manager. Everyone got to say, oh, Brad didn't have the experience, but I'd already won an election.
Kellyanne was the campaign manager, no?
Yeah, I think that was her title. But I think the people running the day-to-day operation were Jared and I. And I think that it didn't make sense why you would pull that team away if you're getting close in 2020.
So you say we had a plan. What was the plan? Articulate it.
Well, that's going to take a book to articulate the whole plan. It's a big campaign. It's $1 billion operation. But we understood where the weaknesses where we need to pick up the votes. We understood what election day operations need to look like because of the legal fight. We planned that fight out 2 years in advance. I understood that this was going to happen. My team understood it was going to happen. We had a plan to increase the Latino and black vote, which we did. We had a plan to try to keep the suburban housewives. We had a lot of plans, and we knew exactly what the path was to victory. COVID threw a wrench in it, but we still had a plan even through that.
So, according to the outcome that we know right now, the President Biden bested Hillary in 373 suburban counties in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. So apparently they had a plan too, and it involved very little campaigning and very little door knocking. So a lot of folks look at the 80 million votes that Joe Biden got, and they say, how did he do that?
Yeah, well, we'll see exactly how that vote count goes out. But I knew, and my plan tried to make this a choice election, not a referendum. And I think that was one of the biggest disputes within the campaign. I knew that if it was a choice over the president with COVID and, the economy, the president with his policies versus Biden, I tested 140 plus policies against Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Trump bested him in 139 of them with American people. They knew the president's policies are what they wanted. The issue was how to keep this as a choice election. Joe Biden's America and going back, that he somehow could do this better, which I don't think he can, or Donald Trump, who had made America better and his policies, and make sure it didn't end up a referendum on him.
So do you think, you say then they changed the plan, you
diverted
let go. What was wrong with the plan from the point when you left and Stepien took over? What changed? What was wrong?
I'm not going to put the blame on any one person. These were the people I hired. Everybody that ended up running the campaign were my deputies. But I think what occurred, and I don't know exactly why, and this is why I started to really have a hard time, is because I tried to stay. I tried to stay on to make sure the plan kept going. Like, I'll take a lesser position because I love Donald Trump. I mean, he's like family to me. That whole family is my family. And I want nothing more than him to win. I want nothing more than this country to progress the way it was. But they paused. They didn't know my plan. They didn't know to execute it or not. And they started to diverge away from it. And they started to test it. Should we use data like this? Should we buy TV like this? Should we run this? Should we do this? Should we even work with the RNC? Which I think were crucial mistakes. And I could name crucial mistakes. And I don't understand why. Because the president should have won by a lot more. He shouldn't be fighting. And I still think he might pull this off, which will be, I give it 100% credit to him if he pulls it off. But I think there was a campaign mechanism helping get that extra 2-3 points, which would have made none of this happen.
And what did that involve?
Well, I mean, what happened changed or what it involved?
So, yeah,
I don't know exactly
when you were sitting at home in Florida during the last few months of the campaign,
yes.
What's going through your mind? You're watching the rallies all across the country during the middle of
I'm watching
COVID.
this off TV.
You're watching the fact that they are pulling ads from swing states. You're hearing complaints that the campaign has run out of money, and in fact, those complaints are leveled at you for front-loading the spending too much, $10 million on a Super Bowl ad, all of that. Yep. So defend that and tell me what they did wrong.
First of all, let's defend the budget stuff. It was only $5 million on a Super Bowl ad. We ended up only going with a 30-second ad. And it was a great ad.
But you didn't need an ad at that point. He didn't have a candidate.
Well, let's put it this way.
Him at that point.
In February of 2020, before COVID, the president in all of our polling was winning by 400 some electoral votes. The Super Bowl ad in itself paid for itself 2 times over, meaning his fan base, his voting base was so excited that he went up on the Super Bowl, the game they watch. They donated tens of millions of dollars to it. So you got to understand, not every dollar I spent was all done just as electioneering. It's also, how do we raise more money? How do we keep our fan base going even stronger? How does the voter get even more excited? How do we keep them fundraising the biggest campaign in history and what we were going to do? At that point, he was killing Joe Biden, 400 electoral votes. It was going to be the biggest landslide in American history since Nixon at that point. And we knew we wanted to win the black vote. Jared and I and the president sat down and said, what is the best thing we can do with the Super Bowl vote? And we chose to put the Alice Johnson up to show the truth between Donald Trump, who actually did prison reform, and Joe Biden, who put black people in prison.
It was a strong ad, I think, by most accounts, just an unbiased political look at campaign advertising.
Made money, helped with the black vote. I think those are 2 goals as me as a campaign manager.
So, but you had, at the end of the campaign, ads being pulled in swing states because they were running out of money.
I think that's completely categorically false. They were not out of money. I left the campaign with $1/3 billion.
So why pull ads in swing states at that point?
Because, as I said before, they had to test everything in my system. They were testing everything. The way I had been buying TV ads since 2016, the way I was using data behind them, the way I was testing ads with data. They needed to see. And I think the funny part about it is by the end, when Jared kind of reconnected back.
For the full podcast, go to foxnewspodcast.com.